what's so key about this when you look at all of these leaders? Just imagine the South African authorities trying to liaise with the security detail of 91 heads of state.
President Obama is approaching the podium now. He is the next speaker up. That's what we're waiting on. Now, there have been a lot of questions raised about security here, and before I came on, we were walking around and talking to security officials.
Castro, he's shaking hands with Raul Castro.
As Christian points out, President Obama just shook hands with Raul Castro from Cuba. Now,
Dilma Rousseff of Brazil.
What does that say as a gesture?
He says that this is a moment of reconciliation for Mandela, and President Obama is doing the diplomatic thing. He's not just going to walk by and ignore these people who are there, and they're all in a line. He's kissing now the UN Secretary General, President Zuma.
This is a man, and it is so true, who brought people together in life, and he continues to bring people together in death.
President de Klerk, he's greeting President de Klerk, the last white president of South Africa who, with Mandela, brought down apartheid.
And they won a peace prize together.
John King, if we can bring you in, I don't know if you just saw it, but President Obama just shook hands with Raul Castro, former leader de Klerk, and others as he came up. What does that mean politically? Is it just about the moment? Does that satisfy the interest of respect? How do you think it plays politically?
Well, I think what the president will say is the conversation you're just having, that this is a moment of reconciliation, it's a moment of tribute to a great man, and it was not a time to make a political statement, so you shake hands out of respect for the moment and move on. No doubt about it, Chris. There's already been some criticism back here of some Republicans who've said nice things about Mandela. There's been this Twitter conversation, another conversation about, well, he was a communist or he was a socialist, and how can you say nice things about him? That's silly season. That should just be set aside. You can have political differences with the policies of Nelson Mandela and still recognize his greatness as a man and for what he did to bring down the apartheid regime. Will President Obama get some criticism for that brief handshake and that very, very brief greeting or conversation? Yes, he will. Comes with the territory, I guess. But I remember at the inauguration, Al Gore went out of his way. The vice president was leading the U.S. delegation. He literally ducked his way behind aides and ducked his way into doors to avoid Fidel Castro. But an inauguration is very different from a memorial service. Raul Castro was right there. I would say the president of the United States really didn't have much of a choice. Had he lingered a long time, he might have started a bigger row than he's going to have. But make no doubt about it. You understand politics. Somebody will decide that was a horrible thing. I think the president was showing respect for the moment.
And President Obama couldn't be getting a better warm-up act.
I know.
Look at this. The whole crowd is...
Johannesburg, my life is in your hands. Durban, my life is in your hands.
That was American gospel singer Kurt Franklin, who just brought this stadium to its feet. The South African crowd dominantly was just going crazy to the stylings
Wonderful.
of Kurt Franklin.
It's just a sense like we're in the middle of a pop concert, half a party, but it's a funeral. It's a memorial service. It's something
Let's listen.
extraordinary.
This truly is what today is about. This moment really captured the joy.
And that is our very son of the African soil, President Barack Obama.
Thank you.
much. Thank you. To Graça Machel and the Mandela family, to President Zuma and members of the government, to heads of states and government, past and present, distinguished guests, it is a singular honor to be with you today, to celebrate a life like no other. To the people of South Africa, people of every race and every walk of life, the world thanks you for sharing Nelson Mandela with us. His struggle was your struggle. His triumph was your triumph. Your dignity and your hope found expression in his life, and your freedom, your democracy, is his cherished legacy. It is hard to eulogize any man, to capture in words not just the facts and the dates that make a life, but the essential truth of a person, their private joys and sorrows, the quiet moments and unique qualities that illuminate someone's soul. How much harder to do so for a giant of history who moved a nation toward justice and in the process moved billions around the world. Born during World War I, far from the corridors of power, a boy raised herding cattle and tutored by the elders of his Thembu tribe, Madiba would emerge as the last great liberator of the 20th century. Like Gandhi, he would lead a resistance movement, a movement that at its start had little prospect for success. Like Dr. King, he would give potent voice to the claims of the oppressed and the moral necessity of racial justice. He would endure a brutal imprisonment that began in the time of Kennedy and Khrushchev and reached the final days of the Cold War. Emerging from prison without the force of arms, he would, like Abraham Lincoln, hold his country together when it threatened to break apart. And like America's founding fathers, he would erect a constitutional order to preserve freedom for future generations, a commitment to democracy and rule of law, ratified not only by his election, but by his willingness to step down from power after only one term. Given the sweep of his life, the scope of his accomplishments, the adoration that he so rightly earned, it's tempting, I think, to remember Nelson Mandela as an icon, smiling and serene, detached from the tawdry affairs of lesser men. But Madiba himself strongly resisted such a lifeless portrait. Instead, Madiba insisted on sharing with us his doubts and his fears, his miscalculations, along with his victories. I am not a saint, he said, unless you think of a saint as a sinner who keeps on trying. And it was precisely because he could admit to imperfection, because he could be so full of good humor, even mischief, despite the heavy burdens that he carried, that we loved him so. He was not a bust made of marble. He was a man of flesh and blood, a son and a husband, a father and a friend. And that's why we learn so much from him, and that's why we can learn from him still. For nothing he achieved was inevitable. In the arc of his life, we see a man who earned his place in history through struggle and shrewdness and persistence and faith. He tells us what is possible, not just in the pages of history books, but in our own lives as well. Mandela showed us the power of action, of taking risks on behalf of our ideals. Perhaps Mandela was right that he inherited a proud rebelliousness, a stubborn sense of fairness from his father. And we know he shared with millions of black and colored South Africans the anger born of 1,000 slights, 1,000 indignities, 1,000 unremembered moments, a desire to fight the system that imprisoned my people, he said. But like other early giants of the ANC, the Sisulus and the Tambos, Madiba disciplined his anger and channeled his desire to fight into organization and platforms and strategies for action, so men and women could stand up for their God-given dignity. Moreover, he accepted the consequences of his actions, knowing that standing up to powerful interests and injustice carries a price. I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I've cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve, but if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. Mandela taught us the power of action, but he also taught us the power of ideas, the importance of reason and arguments, the need to study not only those who you agree with, but also those who you don't agree with. He understood that ideas cannot be contained by prison walls or extinguished by a sniper's bullet. He turned his trial into an indictment of apartheid because of his eloquence and his passion, but also because of his training as an advocate. He used decades of prison to sharpen his arguments, but also to spread his thirst for knowledge to others in the movement. And he learned the language and the customs of his oppressors so that one day he might better convey to them how their own freedom depends upon his. Mandela just demonstrated that action and ideas are not enough. No matter how right, they must also be chiseled in the law and institutions. He was practical, testing his beliefs against the hard surface of circumstance and history. On core principles, he was unyielding, which is why he could rebuff offers of unconditional release, reminding the apartheid regime that prisoners cannot enter into contracts. But as he showed in painstaking negotiations to transfer power and draft new laws, he was not afraid to compromise for the sake of a larger goal. And because he was